down. There's a question of my heart. You got it. It don't belong to anyone but you. Hey, if there's a question of my love.
I love Sade, man. Woo. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but welcome to the Mailman Podcast. My name is Sean Saunders. I'm the host and the content creator. Welcome to our 21 relationship question series. And today we are going to be moving on to questions number 5 and 6. So I hope that you enjoy. Here we go. Okay, question number 5. Let me get this. It's a good question. How many times do you think you should forgive a person before you let go? Once again, how many times do you believe or do you think you should forgive a person before you let go of that person? So how many times should you forgive a person before you let them go? Very good question. Once again, all the questions I have come from not just myself, but they come from other places where I've done research to make sure that I can respond accordingly to the question. So let me start here with this particular question. It's important for you to understand that all of us, when looking for love, we're looking for the perfection of God's person. We can only discover, however, that perfection through the imperfection of our partner's failures. You're looking for the perfection of God's love, the person of God's love, through the imperfection of your partner's failures. So you have to prepare yourself ahead of time for failure. Because the only way you'll be able to discover the perfection of who that person is, or the perfection of who it is God is through that person, is by navigating through the imperfection of your partner's failures. The challenge in life is for us to encourage one another to be the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be. That's the challenge of every relationship. And when you do that, sometimes things become very complex. So I want to tell you that you can expect disappointment in relationships and you should prepare yourself ahead of time. But going back to the question, it's important for you to understand forgiveness depends on a lot of different things. It depends on the act itself. What is it that individual did? And it also depends on your reaction and their reaction, or your response and their response after the action that whatever act they've committed that was a contradiction of the person that they presented to you they are. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you do something and then there's no remorse, or there's no alternative plan of action that will correct and not give you the platform or premise to continue on doing what it is you did. You know, a lot of people say sorry, but if you say sorry and then there's nothing, no alternative that's provided for you to do better than what it is you did the last time. You know, I always tell people, if you beat your kids, then you have to be able to provide them with an alternative so that they don't go back to what it is they were doing that caused them to be in trouble in the first place. Well, that's the same in relationships. What is the alternative action that you're going to take in order to make sure that you don't return back to the place that it is you just came from? A dog always returns back to his vomit. So if there's nothing to suggest to you that that person is going to change their behavior, not just because of you, but because of them, they've been able to recognize some undisciplined area in their life where they realize that they need to actually focus in on and work, then that forgiveness the first time might be enough. Give people opportunities, but don't give people opportunities to the point where they cause you to compromise the integrity of who it is you are. extremely important. If you have to become something you're not in order to accommodate the person they continue to keep pretending to be, then it's going to cause both of you to be miserable. So I would say forgive, but there has to be an alternative plan of action on that person's part to make sure that they don't continue to return to that action. If you continue to see that person do the same thing over and over, and their excuse is, I'm sorry, yes, I confirm that you are sorry, because you're not doing anything to change what it is you're doing, your behavior, your action. So how many times until you see you can forgive and forgive, you may maybe once, twice, 3 times, okay, just depending on the action itself, and this depends on each couple. But after seeing that that person is unwilling to do what it takes in order for them to make the necessary changes to become better, a better version of themselves, so that they don't continue to keep doing over and over what it is they've been doing, eventually you need to let them go. And sometimes letting them go, if whatever it is you have is yours, if God has designated that person to be possessed with what it is you need, to be loved the way that he desired for you to be loved, and they're possessed with that, then if they're supposed to be with you and you're supposed to be together, you'll come back together. There's nothing and nobody that can stop that, with the exception of the two of you. But yeah, you have to be careful, because people take advantage of people when they know they can get away with whatever it is they do. Some people want their cake, whatever the cliche is. You want this, and they want their cake, and they want other things as well. So you just have to evaluate the dynamics of your relationship to see whether or not that person is mature enough to make the necessary responses to become the best version of themselves they can for themselves first, and then for you. And evaluate the relationship. Evaluate if whether or not this person is a long-term person, if whether or not this is a person that is important to the detriment of, or to the success of who it is you're supposed to be, and the mission that it is you're supposed to fulfill with regard to the posture of the person that you were created to be, and what it is you were created to contribute to this world. So just evaluate that. And like I said, every situation is different, so I can't put an absolute on any situation. It just depends. It depends on the severity of the offense. Don't offend yourself. Don't become the offender and the offended. Make sure that you don't take on the onus of somebody else's offense because of their ignorance and their undisciplined appetite for things that they don't need but they desire to have. So forgiveness is you can forgive and not necessarily be with the person. You can forgive and put them in a position for them to be able to become better, because your responsibility is to challenge them to become better, even if that means they're not with you. So I know I took a long time to answer that question, but I only got 2 questions to answer today. But yeah, forgiveness is better for you. It's more for you, not necessarily for them. But once you have forgiven them, make sure that you put yourself in the best position to make sure that you can continue to move forward and be successful in the things that God has granted for you to do in this life. Don't allow anybody to hold you hostage, or, so that's it. That's all I can say. I can't answer for everybody. That's my position and posture. All right, the next question today, and this comes from a female. This didn't come from me. She said, why is it so hard for women to accept, or a woman to accept her role in the failure of her relationship with her significant other? Once again, this is not coming from me, but I will respond to it. Why is it so hard for a woman to accept her role in the failure of her relationship with her significant other? Okay. So, man, this is a good question. Why is it so hard for a woman to accept responsibility for her role in the failure of her relationship with her significant other? So let me just say this. It takes 2 to mess up a relationship. And a lot of people, that may be a statement that a lot of people are saying, well, how is that so? If a man does this, then how is it, especially if she's done whatever it is, everything that she was supposed to do? How is it that it takes 2 to mess up a relationship? And it takes 2 because maybe there are things that she sees or things that she was unwilling to address. Maybe she stayed too long. We talked about forgiveness prior to this, and maybe she didn't challenge him to be the best version of the man he was supposed to be. And when he decided not to be that, she stayed anyway and allowed him to continue on. There is, like I say, relationships have to be a challenge. She has to challenge him to be the best version of the man that God has commissioned for him to be, and vice versa. He has to challenge her to be the best version of the woman that God has commissioned for her to be with regard to their union, the two of them coming together. But when it gets down to the issue, there are a lot of things. First of all, the role of a man has been, the role and responsibility of a man, whether it be a traditional man or a modern day man, has been changed. And what I mean by change, society and their perception of the significance of a man's role has been diluted. Feminism is to me a disappointment. Femininity, masculinity. Now we have women saying that there's a masculine role that women can play, and then there's a feminine role that a man can play. I don't believe any of that. Masculinity speaks primarily to a man. The attitude of approach that a man has with regard to a situation, femininity. We need for women to be feminine. We need for men to be masculine. So the roles have been changed, and the onus of the totality of a relational success has been primarily placed upon the shoulders of a man. And it's unfortunate that that's happened. The failure and or success of a relationship it's successful. Yes. Then it's the woman is engaged in that and she becomes a part of that. But ultimately for the failure, when it comes to the failure of a relationship, the totality of the failure for the most part has been placed primarily on the shoulders of a man. So women haven't been, to some extent, held accountable with regard to addressing, what roles it plays or what role they played with regard to the demise of their relationship. Emotionalism, I try not to go into my own personal battles because I understand sometimes but listen, we are wrong. And I think as a man, you have to accept responsibility for your action. But I also believe that a woman has to accept responsibility for the role that she played with regard to the demise of the relationship. The relationship was running off the rails. Then it wasn't just him, it was you. So what is it you did? What is it? But I think that women have a hard time accepting that. And I think what we do for the most part is, women like to pass the blame. It's hard for women to say, yes, this was my fault. I know for those of us who have gone through divorce, that's why a lot of men, especially when it comes to marriage, the benefits, what are the benefits of marriage? Is marriage is it beneficial on both parts? Because ultimately, if it comes to an end, especially with kids and different things like that, the first thing that people want to do is he's not this and he's not that. It's because of you, and you're supposed to be the band around the house, and you're supposed to be this and you're supposed to be that. And I always tell people you have to be very mindful. If it comes up to me having to make a decision with regard to staying with a person at the expense of doing what it is God has commissioned for me to do, and this person is not in alignment and agreement with what it is God has commissioned for me to do as a man, should I stay with that person, or should I fulfill the responsibility that God created me to fulfill and the plot and the plan that He created for me to do here in the earth? That's the question. Because ultimately, when I have to go before the throne of God and have to be judged on the basis of what it is He commanded and commissioned for me to do, and He asked me, did you do what it is I commanded for you to do? I already know the answer to that. So you have to take those things into consideration. So there are a lot of different reasons, but I want to say this to the women. I don't think that it's all you or it's all your fault that a relationship comes to an end. I believe that you play an equal role just as much as the man plays an equal role. And it depends on the reason for the relationship coming to an end. If a man is whooping your behind or whooping your ass, let me just say it like that, then depending on, if you're allowing that and you haven't initially the first time, if you made excuses for him to continue to keep doing that and you provided him the platform for that to be an okay thing in your relationship, you do have to evaluate and look at what role you played in that, because no man should be putting his hands on you. And immediately when he showed you that aggression, you should have walked away the first time. You shouldn't have never stayed. But if you stayed and continued to allow that thing to go on for a period of time and hid it away from people that needed to know, to whom you are important to, that is an issue. So there are a number of different reasons. Emotionalism, women, the society today has created it so that women, a lot of times, especially in relationships, are more victimized. So they play that role, sometimes the role of the victim, sometimes they are the victim, but sometimes they're not the victim. And that has just been a promulgated thing that just continues to keep happening. So once a woman is able to embrace her responsibility and say, hey, you know what, maybe I wasn't there. Maybe I was there physically, but maybe I wasn't present, even though my physical body was there. Because a lot of times that's the exception. You think just because you're standing there that you think that it means that you've been there. Your emotions, controlling your emotional state and understanding that, yes, even though I may feel this way, just because that's the way I feel doesn't make it right. I've even seen that some women will go to the extent where they will create a truth that is not the truth. They will conjure up in their mind things to try to justify why it is they feel the way they feel and why it's okay for them to stand on their position with regard to the man that they're no longer with. So it's a lot of things. Emotionalism, society's grasp of men, feminism. I think feminism, unfortunately, I think it's good for a woman to understand her femininity, but to understand, the context to which God has created for her to operate within that femininity is extremely important. And I think that that's been something that has been taken and, I think we're both equal. I don't believe that a woman is any less than a man. I think that her contribution is equally important to the man as his contribution is to her. But now it's this equality thing. And then when it comes down to sharing the roles of responsibility, that equality goes out of the window. I feel like there's a one-sidedness. It's what's okay for you is not okay for him. So it's okay for you to do what it is you accuse him of doing, and you get upset for saying that he did. But when you do it, I'm just supposed to accept it and it's supposed to be okay. These kind of things happen. So those are some of the reasons. I don't want to take too much time on this. I took too much time on answering this question, but there's a lot. And if you have anything to say, please contribute and I'll respond to it and let me know what you think. Okay?
Say ignore them till they fade away. Amazing they ungrateful after all the game I gave away. Safe to say I paved the way for you cats to get paid today. Still be wasting days away now had I never saved the day. Consider them my protege. How much I think they should pay instead of being gracious.